After a good sleep, I awoke and made my way to the main bridge. When I arrived, Jem was already there examining the tactical display. She smiled at me and invited me to sit with her. It still felt surreal to me. I should have died in the pirate attack. I was the most junior crew aboard the freighter. Not only that, somehow I had saved Kaluna. They rescued us in deep space where it was highly unlikely to be found. We didn't die out there in space. Too bad I'd never been to a casino before. With this much good luck, I might have become wealthy. I also felt confused about Jem. I only recently developed any affinity with other beings, and Kaluna in particular. Since I met Jem, there's a premonition that we were to be together. She looks so human to me, and she is so friendly and trusting. Teens never prepared me for social interactions with other beings. Outwardly, I kept quiet, having no clue how to act. Fortunately, Ship rescued me from what might have been an awkward moment. "Brian," said Ship, "I interfaced with the computer on board your escape pod, and then I projected the last known course of the escape pod. I am following this course back to the site of the explosion. We should arrive there within the hour." "Smart, Ship." "No problem. I would have done the same if I were you," I said. Jem smiled at me, a similar look to how Kaluna looked at me. Did she know something I didn't? "Captain?" I asked. "You can call me Jem, especially when it's just us," said Jem. "Jem, what is going on?" I asked. "What do you mean?" she replied. "Since we met, you've been looking at me strangely. I figure I'm missing something." "Brian, I believe I might be the last of my species. Ship and I have been hiding out here in deep space. I expected to live my life in hiding, facing extinction. It has been many generations since the last recorded contact with another Baglogi vessel. Then suddenly fortune sends you along." "Again, I'm very glad to be rescued, Jem," I said. "You're missing the point. Ship, how close a genetic match is Brian to Baglogi? Scans record less than 0.0001% deviation. I have compared to historical DNA scans. Brian would pass for Baglogi were it not for his own admission," said Ship. "So," I asked, "the reason I was hiding was for my protection. I had no crew, and I am most likely the last of my species. It was more or less game over. I'm hiding in the middle of nowhere, and you just turn up. A near-perfect genetic match. The chance of this happening is infinitesimal," said Jem, her eyes almost twinkling as she smiled at me. "There's more," I said. "I'm not sure where Earth is. Even if I did, I wouldn't travel there. I'd be alien to them. During my life on Tien Prime, I figured I'd never find someone else that was compatible in terms of physical or genetic compatibility. I always expected to be alone. Now I learned that you're a near-perfect genetic match. That's quite amazing. I hoped I didn't go too far. After facing death, I no longer wanted to keep it to myself. Life is too short." "Excuse me," Kaluna stepped into the main bridge. "I was on my way here and I couldn't help overhearing you." "May I join you?" "Please do," said Jem. "I would be glad of your thoughts." Kaluna sat down with us. "It truly is amazing. I'm thrilled for both of you. In some cultures and belief systems, they'd consider such an event a miracle. Perhaps it's some kind of message from the universe." This was getting complicated. "I hope things don't get weird somehow," I said. "I am new to all this. Kaluna, you're the first being, the first female I have been close to. You mean a lot to me." Kaluna smiled. Then I looked at Jem. "Jem, although we've only just met, I felt a connection since we first met. You're the only being I have ever met who is remotely genetically compatible. It seems too incredible to believe we could meet by sheer chance. I'm overwhelmed." They were both looking at me, as if I had all the answers. If I wasn't sitting, I would probably have fallen over by now, I continued. "By TN standards, I've only just reached adulthood, and this is beyond my understanding. My education didn't prepare me for this. In my entire lifetime, I never expected I might meet someone, or in this case, two someones. I don't understand what to do next. You both are special to me." I'd ran out of what to say. I just stared at them. They both smiled at me. It did nothing to improve my sense of unease. Kaluna spoke first. "Brian, you saved my life. I owe you a life debt. I want only the best for you. Jem, you also saved my life when you rescued us. The same goes for you too. There's nothing weird here, Brian. Your arrival saved my life too. Both of you. We're starting something new together. The three of us. Don't fret over it. I think it will work itself out. We need to be patient, Jem said. She pulled us both into a three-way hug. We remained that way for some time. I felt simultaneously comforted and confused. Later, ship arrived at the location of the attack on the Opaluna. We watched a view of the area on the tactical display. By now, it had been about 20 days since the attack, and the debris field had dispersed widely. Ship scanned the debris and found little of interest remaining. Little remained of the large freighter. I think the carnage shocked Kaluna too. I asked Ship to search the area for traces left by the pirate vessels. Eventually, Ship worked out an approximate direction that the pirates had left. Ship, please could you record the last location of the Opaluna and the results of your scans in the log? Later, we can report the loss to the Ori Confederation and provide them with all the data, said Jem. Confirmed. Soon, we left the attack site and followed the trail left by the pirates. Ship projected the star map of the area on the tactical display. It showed an uninhabited star system about 5 days ahead, so it was possible that the pirates made their base somewhere there. We were making progress, but I wondered what would happen when we found the pirates. I asked Ship, please could you summarize any precedents from Baglogi laws for what to do with pirates? Pirates exist outside the jurisdiction of any civilized systems. They avoid systems with strong defenses. They don't obey the laws. Pirates prey on the weak and threaten legitimate shipping, and they're to be neutralized when possible, said Ship. Jem said, this mission isn't about revenge or even justice. It's about removing the threat of future attacks on shipping in the area. To do nothing would make us guilty of negligence when the pirates strike next. So we need to neutralize an unknown number of pirates with an unknown number of vessels. So far, we have limited data, and the potential risk is high. Ship, we need more data on our targets. What can you do to help? I asked. I suggest a cloaked probe, sent into the system ahead of us, in full stealth mode. We can task it to gather information, then exit the system and report back, replied Ship. Please do that, Ship, and keep us out far enough that they won't detect our presence here, said Jem. Acknowledged. Probe will be ready to depart in approximately 1 hour, and will reach the system within 5 days. When traveling inside the system, it will have to slow down considerably to avoid detection. I estimate 2-4 days for surveillance of the system with passive scanning and another 5 days to return. Total time will be 12-14 days, said Ship. Could we reduce that if we close on the system during that time, I asked. Confirmed revised time until the probe returns would be 8-9 days, said Ship. Well, we've about 8 days to prepare to neutralize the pirates if they're there, said Kaluna. I could sense she was glad that we were being cautious. About an hour later, Ship announced he had launched the probe. Jem had Ship keep an 8-day countdown, displayed on the tactical display, as if any of us would forget. A few hours after the probe had left, I was resting in my cabin. In space travel, you had a lot of time for yourself. There are short periods of frenzied activity when you arrive or depart a system. Between those busy periods, you're in transit for a potentially long time. It gives you time to think. The cabins on board were larger than those of the freighter. I had a generous-sized bed, an ensuite bathroom, a food dispenser on one wall, and a table and chairs. I was laying in my bed thinking about the attack. How did the pirates find us? I looked up and said, Ship, Brian, how may I help you? Ship spoke quite fluent Ori to me. Although Tian was my first language, I had grown accustomed to Ori. Ship seemed to know this. I didn't doubt it could speak fluent Tian. I have a question that has been bothering me. How did the pirates intercept the Opaluna? It was traveling through a remote area of space. How could the pirates intercept a freighter in deep space? I asked. I have insufficient data to answer your question, said Ship. Its neutral tone somehow bothered me. Does Ship have feelings? If their base is in the system ahead, the location of the attack was several days' travel outside of the system. How did they know where to go? It couldn't have been a lucky guess. Interception of a freighter traveling at high speed is difficult. It would require knowledge of their course. I have insufficient data to identify the source of that knowledge, said Ship. Thank you, I said. The pirates were well informed, perhaps by an inside man. Maybe someone at the trading post was keeping a lookout as to our course. Kaluna arrived, distracting my thoughts. I invited her in with a gesture of my hand. She stepped inside and the door closed silently behind her. She came over and took a seat beside me on the bed. I suspected she missed the closeness as much as I did. I put my arm around her back as she leaned into me. We sat in silence together. After a while, she visited the food dispenser in my cabin. The display lit up, showing a menu of beverages and snacks. The menu for her was in Ori, and it included her previous choices near the top. She selected a cup of hot beverage and brought it back to the bed. We resumed our quiet proximity, gaining comfort from each other. I didn't know what to do. I knew I was glad to feel her next to me. She trusted me, and I wouldn't let her down. She didn't seem to want to discuss anything. I was keen not to cause the moment to end prematurely. At some point, we must have moved because I awoke, and Kaluna and I were laying beside each other, with me spoon behind her. I'd wrapped my arm around her. The extra comfort of being close had allowed us to sleep much better. I suspect Ship had turned down the lights. But there was more. I felt someone spoon behind me, with her arm draped over me. This was a first for me. I'd made no advances, yet the three beings on board, not counting Ship, were in my cabin in the same bed together. It was nice and warm too. Perhaps Ship had adjusted the temperature? I really needed the washroom, so I struggled to get up. Jem seemed reluctant to let me go, but I draped her arm on Kaluna and I got out. I got sorted out and then got myself a drink. I was feeling rather dehydrated. The chronometer showed about 10 hours had passed. I figured the stress from all that had happened recently was to blame. After my drink, I returned to bed, this time on the outside, behind Jem. They were both still asleep. I tried to get some more sleep. Soon after, I dozed off again. Later, I awoke. Both Kaluna and Jem were awake and whispering. "Hello," I said. "What do you say when you wake up with two females in your bed?" They both greeted me with smiles. I made a tactical withdrawal. After another visit to the ensuite, I returned. We each got breakfast from the food dispenser and sat at the table. Until recently for me, sleeping was a solitary activity. There was nothing in my Tian education about this sort of thing. I suppose that couples or family units in some species would sleep together. Does our sleeping together make us a family unit? I decided not to bring that issue up. There was another thing to discuss. Today I'd like us to discuss our plans for the pirates, I said. Excellent, we can do that in the main bridge. We can use the tactical display if we need to, said Jem, smiling at me. I felt like I had just passed a test that I was unaware of having taken. Was she waiting for me to start the planning? I again dropped the topic and focused on eating breakfast. Experience taught me that in time, things might become clear. Or not.